Well, I mean, we don't really trade, so we were incrementally buying Bitcoin and Ethereum and things like Solana last year, so we did very well. I mean, listen, 2022 was the worst year for us. 2023 happened to be the best year for us, so it's been the best and worst of times. But I think this is a really big breakthrough for Bitcoin as a digital asset. I think it's a much broader story for digital property in general. And I think Bitcoin will probably see its all-time high before the end of the year and likely to go through its all-time high by this time next year. So hopefully if you're inviting me back next year, we'll be in way better shape. But listen, you know, I didn't expect it. I think this is a big issue and big lesson for investors. When you were talking to me last year, I was getting beat up by the FTX story. I think on my Bitcoin exposure, they were down to $16,000, $17,000 a token. And so it was a very brutal year. And I think it's a big lesson for investors. You have to sit tight. If you believe in the story, you have conviction in what you're doing, you can't waver. And thankfully, SkyBridge was able to do that this year.
I'll get back to your price calls in a moment. Just on this ETF story, look, the industry is extremely ecstatic about everything that's happened. They think this is going to bring in the big institutions. They think this is going to underpin a Bitcoin rally as well. What's your view on the ETF? Is it as big a deal? Will the demand be there?
I do believe the demand is there. I think this provides an opportunity. Remember, this is a wrapper. The SEC is obviously not endorsing Bitcoin, but in a weird way they are endorsing Bitcoin because they've now allowed it from a regulatory point of view to be offered to retail investors with a prospectus. And so this wrapper, if you will allow people to put it in their brokerage accounts. So that is incredibly meaningful. Moreover, I've been on Wall Street for 35 years. Wall Street has a huge sales force, huge financial advisor community. They will be offering this product out to legions of their people. And I would just remind people of what happened to gold, GLD, when that came to pass. When we finally got the gold ETF, it expanded price and it expanded the percentage of ownership of investors. And so I think that's going to happen to Bitcoin. So yes, I think it's incredibly valuable, the Bitcoin story, but crypto and digital property in general, very valuable.
Are you going to be a buyer of the ETF?
I will be, yes. I'll be a ceremonial buyer. I'll probably own some of my own brokerage account, and I'll probably have it in some of the funds.
There were a couple of interesting things that happened after the announcement. One was a spike in the price of Ether, and the second was Gary Gensler's statement. Effectively, I'm paraphrasing here, he was saying, just because we approve this Bitcoin ETF, don't think we're going to open the floodgates to a bunch of other crypto assets. Bitcoin's a commodity. We still think a lot of other stuff are securities. The ETH spike was a lot on speculation that actually an Ethereum ETF could be next. How likely is that given Chair Gensler's view?
Well, I mean, as long as he's in power, it's less likely, frankly, but I do think it's eventually likely. The good thing about the United States is we recirculate our elites. And so, you know, Mr. Gensler's had an unfortunate tenure as the commissioner. He's actually really hasn't done a good job. If you look at it more broadly, he's lost a series of court cases, and he delayed an opportunity, and I think one of his commissioners, Hester Pierce, pointed out, he delayed an opportunity for retail investors to get in at lower prices for Bitcoin over the last decade. So he'll probably block ETH, but that doesn't mean ETH isn't coming, and I think it just requires patience. It may be early on that trade, but ETH is here to stay as well.
Maybe not in the May timeline many have speculated?
Well, I'm more pessimistic about it because he's lost so many cases, and he lost this yesterday. He had to bow at the knee of the Bitcoiners and the Bitcoin community and broader Wall Street. I think he's going to dig his heels in on this stuff.
And your price outlook, you mentioned all-time highs this year. Where does Bitcoin go this year? And then, of course, we've got the halving very soon. What does that do to the price going into 2025? Have you got
so I've been humbled by life and markets, and so when I make these predictions, they don't turn out too well. You know, I'll end up in this ice bath out here. But here's what I do believe. Because of the broader nature of ownership and because of the pushing of the Wall Street sales forces, Bitcoin will go through its all-time high. And remember, we see it as digital gold. And so if you look at the market capitalization of gold at $13 trillion, there's no reason why Bitcoin couldn't be 50 or 60% of that market capitalization. So that implies a 10x price over the next decade. But could Bitcoin be $100,000, which is more or less a double or plus a little bit more than a double by this time next year? I do believe that. But I've been wrong so many times before, you probably shouldn't listen to me on that. But I do believe that that's why we have so much Bitcoin exposure.
Anthony, you mentioned at the start of this chat, we were talking last year about FTX. You were getting beat up over that story.
Yeah.
Since then, we've had, Binance also.
You with your
guilty.
British accent were like more politely beating me up. I was getting really roughed up in the U.S., but go ahead.
Well, you had that Bankman-Fried found guilty on numerous criminal charges. Binance CEO CZ also pled guilty. A settlement with the DOJ as well. You were in business with SBF. Have you spoken to him since the conviction? And what have you learned?
Yeah. Well, I haven't spoken to SBF since the conviction. It's a tragic story. I've spoken a lot about it. What I learned, what I tell people is a financial crime happens with 2, 3, 4 people. It doesn't happen with 50 or 60 people. There's always a person of conscience that will step up and say, I'm sorry, this doesn't work for me. And I think when we think about our operational procedures at a place like SkyBridge or any asset management company, you have to make sure you have tons of checks and balances in the system. And I think the mistake all of us made, whether it was me, venture capitalists, sovereign wealth funds that made the investment in SAM, is they had to do a better job of finding the locus, the center of where the money was getting transacted. Now, SAM did a very good job of shielding us from that, and that's what good frauds are. But I think ultimately that's the lesson.
Hi, I'm Joanna Bersecci, and thank you for watching. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more from CNBC International. Thank you for watching.